Hi, I'm Trish from TrishNewbery.com, PDF Sewing Patterns, and welcome to the sew along for the vest, waistcoat, whatever you want to call it. This pattern is really good for both summer and winter. Today I'm going to be sewing both versions. I'll sew view A, winter fabric, and view B, summer fabric. So it'll switch between colours as we go, but you'll get the idea of it. So just jump over the sections that don't apply. First things first, this is a woven fabric, so you're going to need a sewing machine that just stitches a straight stitch, and you're going to need to have a way of finishing the edges, so you can use a zigzag stitch. I'm going to use a serger. If you use a serger, it's 3 threads. So our seam allowances today are 1 centimetre, 3/8 of an inch for all seams. I'll talk you through this as we go. It's a really great, just an advanced beginner project. Probably even a beginner will be able to do this one without too many problems. I am going to sew view A in 2 different fabrics just because I felt like it. So the main one on the front of the garment is this wool, and on the back of the garment I have chosen this taffeta, because I like the sound of that. And that sound's called scrooping. It's actually a chemical process, but that crunch is called scrooping with taffeta. I just really like those 2 fabrics together. Alright, so before you start, make sure you prep everything. Fuse, which is fusible interfacing, make sure you fuse all the pieces that need it. And make sure you put all the markings on, so that is the pocket markings. If you decide not to sew the pocket, that's fine too, just don't transfer the marks. The pocket is a false pocket, it's only for looks, but the bonus of the fact I've put the markings in is if you wanted to add a pattern piece, you could and put a real pocket in. I just thought it wasn't necessary for this. So what else can I say? You're going to need an iron, because with woven fabrics its general rule is sew a seam, press a seam, sew a seam, press a seam. And well, let's just get stuck into it. We're going to start off by sewing the front. Here is my front piece, and here is my side front piece. So what we're going to do is place them right sides together. I'll just move that pin out of the way for the time being. And we're going to sew this seam here, so sew them together, so that's halfway through the front. When you're sewing this seam, it's a good idea to start from the hem, because seam direction does matter when we're sewing. So start from the hem and sew up around the curve. What I'm going to say is, if you have a really heavy fabric and you are sewing the pocket, when you're finished you might like to press the seam open. I'm going to press all my seams closed except for the side seams. So we'll talk you through that as we go. Alright, so match those seams at the hem and sew a 1 centimetre, 3/8 of an inch seam allowance. You will have notches to match as you go. Okay, so that's what we're looking like there, and you want a nice smooth curve. And then what I'd like you to do is go to your serger or zigzag that seam, because this is an unlined vest, and then we're going to press that seam so it faces towards the side seam, so that's the short side, the shorter side. So when you've done it, that's what it will look like, and go ahead and repeat that for the other side front. Okay, so now we're going to sew the false welt pockets. You're going to have 2 pieces that look like this, and they're fused. So place them right sides together, and we're going to sew a 1 centimetre seam down each short end. So what you're going to do now is turn that so it is wrong sides together, right sides out. You may find it easier if you trim off the corners here. If you're going to trim off the corners, you just need to take a small triangle off the edge, but you need to leave a small gap between the stitching. So you're looking at maybe 3mm, 1/8 of an inch. Make sure you don't cut that stitching there. Now, out of habit, I'm going to do that on both sides. So once you've trimmed that, turn it through. Make sure your corners are nicely pushed out. And then go and give that a press. And when you've done that, repeat it on the other one. So once you've done 2 of them, go ahead and serge, overlock, or zigzag those raw edges together. And I forgot to mention, when we do our serging, we're not cutting anything off, we're just using this to tidy the edge. Okay, so this part I always find the hardest, and I don't know why. I suppose it's because of these angles of the pocket. What you need to do is find the drill holes and mark them. So you'll have a stitch line marked between the drill holes. So the drill holes are a marking point for us. So we're going to stitch 1 centimetres, 3/8 of an inch before and after that position. So they show us where to put this pocket. What we're doing is we're putting our pocket so that this raw edge is right against the stitch line. You probably can't see it, I've actually got it chalked in there. And the beginning and end of this pocket, that drill hole will be 1 centimetre, 3/8 of an inch in on this raw edge. So when you know the final position here, and I know it's right because I can see my grain line because this fabric has got checks on it, or lines on it. So when you know that position, just flip it down like that. We want to be on the down side of this. And what we're going to do now is stitch on top of the pocket at 1 centimetre, 3/8 of an inch. So I'm just going to pull this tail of my serging out of the way. And I'll just leave that pin head there because that'll help show you that drill hole position, but you won't be sewing with it there. So you can see there's the gap there. So we're going to stitch this at 1 centimetre, 3/8 of an inch. So don't forget to back tack. Take that out now. So when we stitch, the line we've chalked in should, if we've done all our markings right, be exactly in a straight line. And we're stitching 1 centimetre to the side, to the lower side of that line, just to guide us. Okay. So tuck those tails to the inside, because we may as well catch all that mess within our stitching. I'm going to just trim mine back to about 1 inch, 2 or 3 centimetres. So tuck them inside, and then roll that pocket up. So what you want to do on the end is we're going to tuck that stitching in, and hopefully your fabric won't be quite as bulky as mine is, but it'll still work. And I'm going to edge stitch both of those pocket sides down. There's our little false pockets in place. So don't forget to repeat that on the other side. Okay, so go ahead and give those a press and we'll move on. Now we're going to put together the back. So take your back piece, and that's been cut on the fold, and open it up and place it right sides together to one of the sides, the side back pieces. So there's notches to match as you go, and just do the same thing. Sew this curved seam and then go to your serger and tidy it. Oh, now I'm sewing this in this taffeta, but if you wanted to sew something heavier, so you can sew this in a linen or a wool or whatever, Sometimes it can be a good idea to fuse, just do a little bit of fusing on this bottom edge. So the hem allowance here is 4 centimeters, so you'd want to put just a block of straight fuse through there, and that's just for reinforcement if you want to. I'm not going to do it with this, but you certainly could. One side done. Right, so I'll go and serge and then press those towards the side seam here. Okay, so here is my back all serged and pressed. Now, you're going to find it easier if you edge tidy the shoulder seams first. So edge tidy the back shoulder seams and then do the same for both of the front shoulder seams, because it's easier to have the seam pressed open. To sew the centre back on view B, take the lower back flounce and at the hem edge tidy it. So I've used my serge overlocker here. Then we're going to sew a hem at 1 centimetre, 3/8 of an inch. So I've just pre-pressed that into place, and all we're going to do is stitch the hem through that overlocking line. So now take your lower back piece that has been cut on the fold and come to the lower edge. Right in the centre you'll have a small notch. So what we're going to do is open this up. This is right side up, and now I'm going to place this flounce right side down like this. So we're going to sew these together. In the very centre of this there's a notch, so that notch there will match to that centre back notch there. We're just going to stitch that together, and that should fit perfectly from side to side at 1 centimetre, 3/8 of an inch. So when you've done that, go back to your overlocker and edge tidy that edge. So here you can see I've overlocked that, and then I've pressed that towards the hem. So this is what your piece should look like when you're finished. You'll have this very gentle flounce at the centre back, lower. To do the side back, pretty much the same as view A. Place the piece right sides together. Now, the, how do I describe this? There's a hem notch here at 4 centimetres, which is 1 9/16 of an inch. So that notch there matches to the very folded edge of the flounce there. Other than that, there's a notch here that will match to the join position of that flounce. And the rest of it should just stitch together just like you did before. So you can just back tack at that hem edge there. So that hem edge is just that position there. And then we'll do the same thing for the other side. I don't normally sew these seam runs in different directions, I'll sew that from top down. Right, so just like we did with view A, we're going to overlock tidy those edges there. But while you're on the job, also overlock tidy the hem edge through here on both of those side pieces, and overlock the side seams as well. So I have not yet pressed it, but this is what it should look like at the hemline. So press those hems towards the side seam here, and also go to the hem area and memory press a seam or a hem up at 4 centimeters, which is 1 9/16 of an inch. And you'll know where to do it because there's small notches on either side. So do that on both sides here. And now we're going to stitch this hem up just here. So to do this, what we're going to do is fold this flounce back on top of the side seam like this, sandwich the other side over the top, match the edge here, and just stitch at 1 centimeter, 3/8 of an inch. Now you'll need to make sure that that is butted right in there. So the stitching up here should meet with your stitching there, like that. And what will happen is when we turn it through, you'll get this really nice transition for the flounce like this. And then just go in and repress that nice and tidy. And do the same thing on the other side. So all I'm doing is placing it right sides together like this, bringing the hem over the top and matching the seam, and then stitching at 1 centimeter. And then turning it through. Once you've edge tidied them, place the shoulders right sides together. So take the back, place it right side up, take the fronts, place them right side down, and match the shoulder seams. And now we're going to sew this together at 1 centimeter, 3/8 of an inch. Okay, so go to your iron and press that seam open. Now we're working on the facing, so you're going to have two that looks like this. So we need to serge tidy some of these seams. So what we're going to do, or you could zigzag, is we want to serge across here, and we also want to serge the inner curve here only. We'll do that for both of the front facings. And go ahead and do that for the other front. And then for the back neck facing that looks like this, we want to do the shoulders, and then we want to do this inner curve here at the bottom. Okay, so place the back facing and the front facings right side together, and we're going to sew the shoulder seams at 1 centimeter, 3/8 of an inch. Okay, so go to your iron and press those seams open. Now I'm just going to do a touch more serging. I'm going to serge these short seams on the back facing. And I'm also going to serge all 4 of the side seams on the main outer part of my garment. So lastly, come to the back hem area and serge tidy this hem. And now go to your iron and memory press a hem up to the wrong side. There's notches there, and those notches are marked at 4 centimeters. So go ahead and press that up like so. Now we're going to sew the facing to the garment. So place your garment and your facing right sides together, making sure everything matches. Okay, so we're going to start on one side and we're going to sew a 1 centimeter seam allowance, 3/8 of an inch. Remember to match your notches as you go. View B is pretty much the same as view A when you're stitching this together. The only difference is clipping the curves. So at the centre front upper, you might like to just trim off corners like so. And you'll probably want to clip into the curves here and also the neckline curves as well. You could do it down here on the corner, just cut a little triangle out like so. You could do a big one. It's really up to you what you feel more comfortable with. So basically you just want to clip anywhere you think there will be a point of stress. And you could of course also trim these seams back to 6mm if you want, 1/4 of an inch if you prefer as well. So I'm going to do that there, and I'm also going to clip around the curves here and around the neckline. And you're probably going to watch the video about the next step, which is the pin stitching, the understitching. Pretty much the same idea to follow. Just stitch as far as you can on the underarm part. Next we're going to be doing some pin stitching, which some people call understitching, just to help create roll to the back. But a good idea now is just to trim back the seam allowances and do some clipping just to reduce some of the bulk. So what I'm going to do is just do small nips. They're probably 6mm, 1/4 inch deep towards my stitch line. Just leaving a small gap. I mean, you can cut little V's out. Some people like to just do little V's like that. And also if you want to, instead of doing that, or as well as doing that, you could reduce that seam allowance to 6mm, 1/4 of an inch, whatever you prefer. So I'm only really going to do it at the back neckline because I don't think there'll be a problem around the front. But if you find there's any pulling later, you can do that. So we are now going to do some pin stitching, understitching, which is, as I mentioned, just to create roll to the inside so you don't see the facing. So what that means is we place our garment so that when we pin stitch, all the bulk will be under the facing side. So see that seam? That all needs to sit like this, so when we fold this over, we'll be stitching through all the layers on this side, and we want to stitch pin width apart. So that's using your presser foot as a guide. It's maybe 1/8 of an inch, it's just a couple of millimeters pin width on that side there. Okay, so when you've done that, go to your iron and press this, and make sure that when you press it, push it as far to the fold as you can, but you still want that stitching to be on the inside. So now it's all pressed, looking lovely. Turn it back so that it is right sides together again, and we are going to stitch the armholes on both sides at 1 centimetre, 3/8 of an inch. And when you've done both armholes, just trim the curves, clip the curves at that sharp turn on both the front and the back. You can see they're only like 1 centimetre, 3/8 of an inch apart, they're not huge. So do that for both sides. Okay, now turn that through so that wrong sides are together or right sides are out. Okay, so this is the left front as if we wear it. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to edge stitch the armhole. Now this side you'll struggle to get too far, but go as far as you can. It may only be just past the princess seam line, so we're going to pin stitch. Pin stitch and edge stitch are the same stitch, it's just, which is understitching, which it's just, the difference is pin stitch is when you want to create roll to the inside, and edge stitch is like a decorative feature for a pocket. So make sure when you're doing this, same thing again, you're only sewing on the facing. So that's what I mean, you won't be able to go too far. So here's the princess seam coming up here. I'm probably only going to be able to sew maybe 1 inch past that because this is quite bulky wool. So I'm just going to go up there, back tack, and then I'll come to the back of my garment and do the same thing on the facing there. All that bulk towards the facing side and pin stitch on the facing side. I can get up as far as the seam, so I will repeat that on the other side. Okay, so go and give that an iron and we can move on to the side seams. I just thought I'd give you a quick heads up on the facing for view B. So with view B, because of the angles here, you're not going to be able, you only can stitch as far as you can go. So what I've done is at the hem edge, I've only gone as far as that angle, so I've stopped there and started there up to the front. When you get to the front, I've started and stopped. Oh, it's around about 3/4 of an inch, 2 centimeters from either edge there. So that might just give you a bit of an idea. All you can do is stitch as far as you can go, and just make sure you know where you did it on one side so you can mirror it on the other side so it looks the same. Now we're doing side seams. So place this garment right sides together with the side seams matching. So what you will find is there is a notch at the hem press turn position, and that should match to our seam line there, and that will match. And then there's a notch part way up that you should be able to see through your overlocking line. And then the seams will match here. So what we're going to do is just stitch this together in a 1 centimeter, 3/8 of an inch seam allowance. Okay, do that on both sides and then press that seam open like that. Okay, so here you can see the seam pressed open. What we're going to do now is, making sure this is exactly folded up on itself, we are going to stitch in the ditch. So what that means is, I'll do it from the front, but I thought I'd show you from the back. I'm just going to tuck in all those little loose overlocking threads. We want to make sure the seam here is sitting on top of the seam here, and we want to stitch directly through that stitch line. So let me take that through, and we're going to do that for both the top and the bottom facing. So I'm just coming up slightly from the hem, maybe 6 mil, 1/4 of an inch, and I'm stitching directly in or on that seam allowance, because what we want to happen is we want the stitches to just disappear into the grain of the fabric. So we're doing that at the hem and at the armhole as well, and what it's going to do is just help keep our facing in place. So just make sure you're only stitching through the layers you need to, making sure those seams are pressed open. So we're only doing it the depth of that facing, which is 4 centimeters. Okay, so do that on both sides. And now we need to stitch the hem in. So stitch the hem in directly through that overlocking line. You can do that from the back or the front. I like to do mine from the front. So that hem is at 4 centimeters. And stitch it just from the edge of the side seam through. Okay, so give your garment a final press, and next we need to look at buttons and buttonholes. For view B hem, it's pretty much the same as view A. The only difference is we only have one small panel to stitch between. So here is my flounce and here is my left front as if you wear it. So all we've got to do now is stitch the hem on this panel here. So basically we're stitching through that overlocking line at 4 centimeters, which is 1 9/16 of an inch. I'm going to do mine from the right side. I'm going to start right on that overlocking line and right where the seams meet. And I'm stitching across to the side front there. So now we're looking at buttons and buttonholes. Because this is women's wear, our buttonholes go on the right side as you wear it. So it's this side here, and I've put suggested placements on the pattern piece. I've allowed for 5. You can change it, whatever you like. Main thing is that you stitch in your buttonholes before you stitch your buttons. If you struggle with buttonholes, and some people hate them, even sewists that have been sewing for years, totally understand. Just put snaps in place, and cam snaps are amazing, and they look really good too. So I'll go away and do that and come back. Here are the buttonholes finished on the right front, and I've just gone ahead and sewn the buttons on the left front. And just like that, you're finished. Thanks for joining me. Thanks for buying my patterns. I hope you enjoyed the sew along video. If you've got any comments, I'd love to hear them below, or I'd love to see your makes on my Facebook page. So have a great day. Thanks for joining me, and if you like what you see, please hit the thumbs up and hit the subscribe button, and I'll see you back again soon for more sew along videos.